Diletta, really, really awesome to see you, and I'm thrilled to have a chance to sit down and chat to you about your entrepreneurial journey, but also just your personal background, your cultural perspective, and all of the skills and things that you've had to get to where you are today. So let's get started.
Let's go.
Let's go. So you now live in Melbourne, but you actually migrated from Indonesia. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your family and how you came to be here?
Yeah, for sure. It has been a little bit of a journey landing in Melbourne. Melbourne is officially the city that I have spent the most time living in consecutively, in consecutive number of years. So I am going on to 9 years here in February next year. But before that, I moved countries maybe every 3 to 4 years. I'm originally from Jakarta, Indonesia. And because my father worked in foreign affairs when I was 2, we moved to New York. Spent about 4 years there, came back in 2000, another 4 years in Indonesia, and then we did 3.5 years in Canberra. During that time, we went on a family road trip down to Melbourne, and I would have been in year 5 or year 6. And I'm not sure whether it was the contrast of coming from Canberra into Melbourne or really just something inherently unique about Melbourne, but I really felt the draw to the city and was just always curious about it and had it in the back of my mind. I was creative as a child, drew more than I wrote in school. And so there's something quite like indulgent and fun about being a creative, but I've had this feeling of like FOMO about like, how does the world work and how can I actually use my skills to apply it in, you know, being a member of society.
Just a real like sense of curiosity and wanting to understand, you know, how things tick from the sounds of it.
100%. Yeah, thank you for that. Totally. And so when it was time to pursue master's degree, postgraduate studies, Melbourne felt like an obvious choice.
I mean, for somebody creative and curious, I'm not surprised you felt the draw to Melbourne. And we know we love our friends over in Canberra, but there's something a bit special about this place.
100%.
And obviously now you do business in Melbourne. You run your own consultancy called Small and Scale. And why do you think actually being physically in Melbourne is a great place for businesses to start?
Oh gosh, so many reasons. Maybe let's begin with like the supports that are available for early stage founders. I think we know just even globally at the moment, the bar for entry to get something out there and test a business idea is a lot lower. You can get things online, ship things quite quickly and experiment. But I think with Melbourne, like, and Australia actually, there's a high regard for peak craft and quality and doing things really well. And so there are a lot of support mechanisms, whether it's funded by the government or universities, that are out there to help early stage entrepreneurs really sharpen their craft and elevate their offering to that higher bar. And I feel like, you know, without even purposefully thinking of myself as an entrepreneur when I first got started, and I would have been in my early 20s. This is after finishing my postgrad and really struggling to get a job. There were just so many support mechanisms out there that I could tap into, like free access to co-working spaces, lots of learning opportunities through workshops and talks and conferences. And so it was just actually about looking out to see what was out there and really taking advantage of those things.
Absolutely. Melbourne has so much to offer when it comes to the events, the support, and actually that's been some of your journey, is being part of the fabric of early stage entrepreneurship. So whether it was at Deakin University's Spark program, which is that sort of accelerator entrepreneurship program, or at Start Space at the State Library Victoria, all of these are kind of part of the tapestry of entrepreneurship. But I'm curious about actually when you made that jump from being an international student who'd had this incredible life of experience and then landing here in Melbourne and starting your career. What did that feel like? Was that a different kind of energy of, okay, I've had this cool upbringing and now it's time for me to make my own way?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting with Melbourne because there's two things about it that I'm wanting to articulate. Firstly, it's a melting pot of a city. So there is a lot of diversity in Melbourne, and that is quite celebrated, but there is also, I think, a very Melbourne way of doing things, whether you're thinking about that from career growth or specific industry lens, or how things are done academically and in across workspaces, even socially. And
it's a real challenge, right?
Yeah, so it is something to figure out. And I find that it's a little bit of a dance between trying to get a sense for the Melbourne thing, but then also honoring what's unique about the background that you bring, because those things pair really well together in a city like Melbourne, where there is an appreciation for that diversity, but then also a dance with how things are done here.
Yes, that's a really nice way to put it, because I think some people do find themselves in a new place, either as a migrant or a student, and they feel immediately they have to fully assimilate. But I really love the way you've articulated that dance between, you know, who you are and what the city offers. Now, was it all smooth sailing coming out of university and into a place now where you have your own business? Can you give us a few of the highs and lows of what happened between then and now?
Was it smooth sailing? Absolutely not. I mean, I think that's also normal for everyone's life experience, but gosh, there is so much to figure out. At the beginning, as I mentioned earlier, I found it really hard to find full-time employment. I think because in terms of field of study, I pivoted. So I came from this creative background and I entered a master's of international development. And you know, I was embarking on this journey of trying to make sense of the social impact sphere in Melbourne, trying to tap into not-for-profit organizations and volunteering and all of these things.
Lots of exploration all around the place.
Yeah, absolutely. But I didn't quite have the same credentials as a lot of people who were typically winning work in these industries or in these arenas. But then I remembered, you know, actually here at RMIT, where we're recording at the moment, on my first ever night of attending masters at RMIT, the lecturer had this quote written on the whiteboard, and it was from Aristotle. And I like recite this quote so much, but it has actually paid dividends for me. Where your talents and the needs of the world meet, there lies your purpose. And with this quote, I love that balance of understanding, you know, what the demand is out there, where the opportunities lie, but then also honoring what's really unique about what you can bring to the table. And so reflecting on this, I thought, well, I've got a, you know, visual creative arts background, and a lot of these not-for-profit organizations and social enterprises are under-resourced and either can't afford to invest in really high quality design and brand and creative assets. And so that's where I dived in. I saw the gap in the market, and I started off just volunteering my time, and eventually building a local portfolio. That volunteering of my time led to paid work opportunities.
That's such an amazing way to think about starting a career and also being entrepreneurial without necessarily starting a business. I mean, entrepreneurship can just be bringing something to the world that it needs, and you obviously found that combination of, as you said, what the world needs and what you can bring. So I feel like this thread comes all the way through to small and scale and what it is today. So in a nutshell, do you think you could give us, you know, what is small and scale and how does it help to solve some of the challenges you felt in Australia?
I think a lot of what I do is centered around this question of how we can feel more at home in this world. And I've had to figure that out for myself lots of times. And studying international development, working across different sectors and industries in Australia, I started to see the workings of the machinery in our society that inform and enable people and communities' abilities to feel that sense of home in our world. And having this design background, it's about using design thinking tools and frameworks to create those little shifts so that people can have more of this home experience.
Very nice.
So with Small and Scale, I'm working with people across the sector, agencies, governments, institutions, but then also communities to co-create solutions that hopefully enable more of that experience of people feeling
Yes.
at home.
Yeah, it really sounds to me that you've taken kind of your personal seeking of finding meaning and finding a fit in whatever city you happen to be in, and you've kind of recognised that that is a common experience across communities and government. And so it's interesting to sort of hear that design agency doesn't just mean graphic design, which I think some people think, but it's service design and experience design and programs and facilitations and helping governments and communities connect.
Yeah.
You recently landed a contract with DFAT, right? Is that?
I did land an amazing opportunity working with the Department of Foreign Affairs of Australia, the ASEAN Secretariat, the Asia Foundation, and Love Frankie. So coalition of organizations coming together to run this ideathon in Southeast Asia. So it was a regional program that brought in young people from all across Asian member state countries, Timor-Leste and Australia. And kind of like a hackathon in a startup setting, they were working together to come up with ideas, campaign ideas, combating misinformation and fake news. So I was flown over.
Just a small problem in our society these days.
No big deal. And so they flew me over to Jakarta to run a training and coach the teams towards building out their campaigns.
Yes, that's so cool. And do you think that your personal cultural background and your lived experience helped you win that contract and deliver what you were able to do for those companies?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been sitting with this a little bit, right? Like, often we have to ask the question as well when we're taking on a piece of work, like, why are you the best person to do that? From a business perspective, it's like, well, what's your key value proposition? And sometimes we think, long and hard about, what is that core value proposition that you can identify. But usually the answer is actually quite, obvious. It's inherent in who you are. Yes. And often the call to action is to lean into it and really harness it. And so I think over time, because in the context of moving overseas, I was always really close to that sense of being Indonesian. That was always core to what I naturally went about and did. It was always the low-hanging fruit in a way, but I wouldn't diminish this low-hanging fruit at all. I think that's something that's like of great value that we can really...
I completely agree. And I'm just excited about this point because I think sometimes I see people feel like something's easy for them or natural for them, and then they dismiss it as being not important. But what I'm hearing from you, Diletta, is if you naturally feel something works for you or it's part of your identity, go harder there rather than think, oh, it must be easy for everyone. Is that sort of the feeling?
Actually, thank you for articulating that for me, because that kind of also just landed. It was more of a hunch for me, and it was like that seemed obvious, but sometimes there's a sense of guilt in that. It's like, actually I need to be like working harder and like, but actually you can just lean in. Absolutely.
And I think it really goes when entrepreneurs are thinking about how to pull their businesses together or what areas to focus on. You don't just have to follow the trends because everyone's in AI or everybody's, raising capital. You can absolutely follow your own pathway.
Yeah. And then something that I teach through Small and Scale is like, you do that macro scale systems map of like what's going on, but then you have to put yourself into that picture as well. And then you set a boundary of like, oh, what are the things that are actually within reach for me and start there.
It also helps you with your competitive advantage, right? Because you're not going to be everything to everyone. You can't serve every customer, but you can serve them your way in the way that you particularly need to do it. That's awesome. I think it's a really great lesson for all entrepreneurs and professionals. So thank you so much for sharing that. Can we talk a bit about the finances? Because, we're talking business. Your consultancy has actually been profitable from day one, which is like snaps to you. Is this because of the customer validation that you've done, or what work did you do before that to kind of get to this successful point?
Love that question. So I think two things come to mind. First of all is like identifying where there's demand, and to keeping your operations really lean. And I think being an independent, there's a lot of opportunity to do that and to be agile in how you approach the work. And the reason why I pair these two together is because I think it actually gives me a really unique advantage. So let's say that there is a demand for a certain type of work. And often in the context of design, for example, the demand for that is required in lots of different scales. You know, you've got like federal government size client projects, and you've got like your small early stage business project or a small not-for-profit kind of project. And so figuring out where in the market you can best position yourself is the first advantage that you can lean into. But then on top of that, being independent means that you don't have so many overheads, and you can also be quite flexible in meeting unique client needs, because working with a more established practice, for example, they might have something really high value and really developed, and I think that there is a time and place for that. But sometimes meeting the client where they're at and having that flexibility is an advantage that being independent, lean, and agile is something you can really harness.
It sounds like being led by demand and keeping lean and flexible, it's helped you with your confidence and really starting from, 0 to 1 and making those first steps. But I'm actually really curious, because you strike me as such a composed person. You're very thoughtful, considered. There's got to have been some challenges and hard moments along the way. Could you maybe share with us just one of the hard lessons that you've learned and what that did for your confidence and your skill set?
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're talking about business, I think worth shining a spotlight on things like pricing and valuing oneself, especially when you are working, in this kind of space where you are the service. So I've started two businesses in Melbourne. Small and Scale is my second one. My first one was the one that I started in my early 20s when I couldn't get a job. And I was charging close to nothing for my time. For me, it was just about getting an opportunity and getting experience and getting some form of income. But it was nowhere near, one, what the work deserved, or two, what I needed to survive. And I needed to have experience working in industry to actually really understand the value of the work that I was delivering.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, because sometimes you find, when you're just saying, can you buy my thing that I do, you're willing to almost give people whatever prices they'll pay so you can get a foot in the door.
For sure. And if you're coming from a country where the state of economic development is different to Australia, you're just happy to be here. You're just happy to be earning some kind of Australian dollars, but you need to be pitching yourself at the same level of the market here, because it's not just it's good for you, obviously, not just from a survival sense, but it's good for the work. You're valuing it differently, and so is the client. And so naturally, as a result of that, you'll be delivering better outcomes. And I think as a result of working in industry and as a consultant, I got really good at understanding the value that I was offering, and also managing my time better. And so, consultants track their time religiously, and I still do. All the time that I spent having coffees with people, I've got a toggle where I categorize every single type of activity, and so I can see the true cost of the work that I'm doing.
Wow.
And I'm aware of how much of it I'm doing in kind or as a personal investment. And so nothing is just about, flailing around and like blah blah,
just hoping for the best.
Yeah,
it's all scientific.
Yes. There's purpose.
That seems to be a trend with you, not only from your upbringing and experiencing lots of things, but now learning from lots of people. I love that. Now, what does actually a small and scale session look like? What's an experience that I might have if I'm a client of Small and Scale? What are we going to do together?
Yeah, great question. So you might come into a conversation with me with a problem or a question, and in return, I might challenge you by asking, well, who does this involve, and what do we need to do to begin solving your problem and come up with an innovative solution to solve it as well. And so I think the key value prop of Small and Scale is that I use a clear design framework and methodology to help bring more perspectives into a design process. We can call it co-design as well. We can call it weaving. And the benefit of doing this is that at the end of it, you come up with a concept, prototype, or solution that actually meets the needs of the people who this thing matters the most to. I guess like in startup talk, it's like validation and user testing.
Yep.
And I'd like to think that, this approach just opens up a lot more space for imagination and creativity, because we don't just want to be validating based on proven solutions out there, but also imagining what a better world can look like. So also challenging our perspectives, ideologies, and like what we're designing towards.
Yeah, I really like that. So you're helping me solve a problem, but with the specific inputs of people who are actually experiencing it, with all the stakeholders that we might not consider, right? It's really fascinating.
And if I can add to that, Jeanette, I think there's another layer that's really important to me and why I do what I do. If we were working together, it wouldn't just be about delivering the outcomes that we were looking to on like the project brief that we've agreed on, but I think this shared collective learning experience of what we can gain from working in this way, that's really important to me in all my interactions, whether it's with clients or communities, like this way of thinking systemically, like how can we begin shifting our approach at that transformative mindset level and building the capabilities to work in this way, not just to achieve something and tick a box.
So it's a multifaceted, multi-value adding. I love it. Very cool.
I hope so.
I'm curious, what is next for Small and Scale? What are you most excited about for the future?
Yeah, I think in the next couple of years, I'm really interested in taking Small and Scale to a global context. So the recent work that I did in Southeast Asia was one of the first steps of validating that opportunity for myself. And, it's cool being in Melbourne because like we already have the arena where you can develop a business to a really high quality. And the global perspective towards Melbourne reflects that. People, I think, understand that, respect the work that comes out of Melbourne. So I really want to continue leveraging that, but then exploring how this can transcend beyond the borders and work with people across the world and regionally and, tap into my Indonesian, Southeast Asian background, apply myself there, hopefully for as long as I can and for as long as it's fun and interesting for me. And after that, I don't know, maybe I'll make myself redundant and write a book about it. Live my life.
It sounds like Small and Scale has got fun and impactful work ahead of it. Diletta, sounds like you have fun and impactful work ahead of you. And the things that I've taken today is lean into your strengths, value yourself appropriately, and listen to, your own self-reflection and the needs of the world. So Diletta Legowo, thank you so much for your time today.